Hi, I just want to make a short video to accompany the text that I sent in relation to the article from the BBC with Spain and the World Cup. So I just want to identify the key words that I have highlighted, and I also want to try and explain a little bit my points about those particular words. So the headline is the World Cup 2018, the media brand Spain stupid and negligent. So the first thing to note here is the word brand. In English, the word brand is translated into marca, which is a substantive, and como Adidas or Nike, we say a brand. So what brand of boots do you have? What brand of jersey do you have? It could be Adidas or Nike, but in this situation, it's the verb, and it's similar to in Spanish, llamar, like to call. So the media really call or name Spain stupid. That's the difficult understanding of the word brand here. Then negligent is very important as well. I think it's neglijar in Spanish, but the verb in English is to neglect, and we use that a lot. But in Spanish, I don't think you use it the same, but it's very common in English, the verb to neglect. And negligent is the adjective. So a person is negligent in relation to leaving something unattended. So it's an important word in English, and I think it's more common in English than Spanish, perhaps. The next word is the end of an era. An era, I think, is a translation for epoca, like a stage or a time. So end of an era means the end of a epoca in Espanol. The Spanish media pulled no punches. That's the most difficult expression to this moment. Pulled no punches. A punch is in a fight, like a pelear. It's the boxers, they punch. So if you pull no punches, it means you have you're absolutely honest and maybe really overcritical. So if you pull no punches, you are really honest but almost critical, probably very critical. And then just the next purple, you can see the preposition from and to. So they're talking about two different situations. I just wanted to identify the two prepositions, the connection, and I think you understand that. The sacking, in English we have a verb to sack, and it's very typical in football to sack a manager. It's when they lose a job. We also say they are fired, they are sacked. I think in Spanish it's despedir, something like that. When the manager loses his position, he is sacked by the club. So here it's the substantive, the sacking of Julen Lopetegui. On the eve, that's very important. So the eve is the night before. Noche Buena in Espanol, I think, is in English Christmas Eve. So the day before the 25th is Christmas Eve. We also have New Year's Eve, which is the 31st of December. So it's quite common in English to use this word. In Spanish, I don't think it's as frequent. The interim boss. So an interim boss is the manager who is in control in between the previous manager and the next permanent manager. So it's like a temporary manager. That's the interim boss. An aging squad. So a squad is a plantilla, and an aging is the adjective in relation to it's old. It's similar to getting old, becoming old. It's interesting and it's an important, but the plantilla in English is the squad. The media blamed many factors. So the verb here is to blame. In Spanish it's acusar. We could also say accuse in English, which is very similar, but blame is practically the same as acusar. So the media blamed many factors. A penalty shootout is the competition in penalties. After extra time, we have a shootout. It's a difficult word. It's not really the same in Spanish, but we use in English a penalty shootout. Defeat. So there's a verb, the verb to defeat, that you need to be very clear. So, for example, Russia defeated Spain on penalties. So there's 3 or 4 different verbs that we have: to win, to lose, and to defeat. So you need to be very clear with that. So here it's a loss. So it's very similar to a loss, a defeat. Left the 2010 champions stunned. That's a very important word. There is a verb in English to stun. It's like un susto, a fright, a shock. So if you are stunned, you have no emotion. You are almost numb. We say N-U-M-B when you have no feeling. You know, the gun for the police, they have the stun gun that destabilizes the person. So there's no feeling. So if you are stunned, it's almost like shocked, asustar. The next word is really important. It's very common in English and it's difficult to translate into Spanish, but the pronunciation is naive. It's an adjective. If a person is very naive, It means they're not very experienced, they're not very intelligent with their decisions because of their age. So this is that it's a difficult headline to translate, but the word naive is very important. It's very typical with young people. So if they start a new job, if the person starts a new job and they make a bad decision, you say it's because they have no experience, so they are naive. The next one's very difficult. It's a typical expression in English, a quick trigger finger. So a trigger is in relation to the pistol, the small piece of the pistol that you pull. That's the trigger. In English, it's a verb as well, to trigger. So the sunshine triggered my headache, or the chocolate triggered my headache. It caused, I think causar is probably the same family, the same best translation. But here, if you have a quick trigger finger, it means you're quick to pull the pistol, to pull the gun. So you're quick to shoot in terms of the sacking and the manager losing his job. So they made a quick decision, basically. It's a good expression, it's very native, and it's difficult to understand for a Spanish or Italian or French person. The players finished with some negligent performances, so the word negligent again, but here you have the phrasal verb, finished off. A phrasal verb is a verb with a preposition. So there's very little difference here between finish and finish off. So the players finished the tournament with some negligent performances. And a performance is rendimiento. It's a very important word in sport and football. So the verb is to perform, and here the substantive is a performance. A match is a partido. So La Roja's 4 matches. A partido is the translation for a match. You can also say a game, which is practically the same. The next one that I want to show you is to reduce to, and in English it's very typical to have a preposition associated with the verb. So here it is the verb to reduce with to. So the jacket is reduced from €100 to €10. So it's very typical to reduce something to. That's the key here. Also, the next one is loading everything on. So the verb to load is cargar. So you're loading something on somebody. For example, loading pressure on. The media is loading a lot of pressure on the manager. The next one is probably the most difficult word in this text in relation to vocabulary. It's in yellow, and it's shortcomings. It's like deficiencies in English. There's a synonym for shortcoming like deficiencies. So Hierro's team showed all its deficiencies, all its shortcomings. So probably it's the most difficult word in this text in relation to vocabulary, but it's a very good English word and it's something we use a lot. Again, the verb to lose, perder, and in relation to sport, we have a few verbs: to win, to lose, to defeat, and here it's losing, the gerundio of the verb perder, to lose. The next word is reaching, and the verb in English is to reach. The translation is alcanzar. So you reach your goal, is meta. You reach your objective, you reach your target. But here is reaching the terrible game. So it's a very key word in English, the verb to reach. And I know in Spanish it's very typical as well, alcanzar. The next word, the verb is specific for football, to defend. So you have two key verbs in English, to attack and to defend. The delantero is the forward, the striker, the attacker, and the opposite is the defender, the person who is in number 5 and number 6, the centre back. So the verb is to defend, and here's the past simple, defended. It's regular. The next word is very important vocabulary. It's very difficult to understand, but for natives it's very simple. To withdraw. So in English the situation is withdraw money. You withdraw money from the cash machine. You can withdraw from a competition. That means to quitar a competition, to leave a competition. And in football, you can play very withdrawn. It's like to park the bus. Very defensive is very withdrawn. It comes from the verb to draw, and that is dibujar in English, which is like a picture or a painting. But in English, to draw, if you have an infection in your hand, for example, an infection, and you want to extract the infection, that's to draw out the infection. For example, Beyonce comes to Dublin, she draws a crowd. It's like attract. So there's two meanings, to attract and to extract. And here it's in relation to football, withdrawn. It's very defensive. Even is another grammar situation that we need to explain a lot. The translation is incluso. So everybody is going to the city, even Juan. So that's incluso, Juan. It's very typical in English and it's very common, and it's important to remember. The next word for vocabulary is the verb to hint. The substantive in English is a hint. In Spanish, it's un pista. So if you have a question and you want a clue, you want a hint, you want un pista, a little bit of information. So it's a very good word. It's very creative and it's very nice English. The next word is important as well. It's a verb to lack. That's faltar, but the substantive is un falta, a lack of. Un falta de is a lack of. So they had a lack of mobility in the team, according to the article. The next combination is a phrase, the golden rule, regla de oro. I'm sure it's similar in Spanish. It's a golden rule. When you defend, you have to defend together. That's the golden rule, for example. Then the key word specific for football is to pass. You pass the football. That's the verb. The substantive is a pass, and in this situation, it's plural. P-A-S-S-E-S, the passes. The next word is also specific in relation to football. In Spanish, you use ocasión for an opportunity or a chance. In English, we use a chance. So the striker had a great chance, a great opportunity to score a goal. But in Spanish, you use occasion a lot more. So that's an interesting word and it's very important specifically for football. The purple grammar issue for should is key. We have a family of verbs called the modal verbs. Can, may, might, could, would, should. In Spanish, I think you have one verb, poder. So should have offered is poder. So it's important that you, well, if you're learning English very intensely, you'll need to understand the modal verbs. The next one is surely. So are you sure? I am sure, seguro. And then seguramente, I think, is the best translation. Surely. It's a good word and it's interesting to use it when you can. The next word is common in English. It's probably difficult to translate. It's a verb to approach. It's how you go hacia un problema. What is your attitude for a problem? So what is your approach for the game? Are you very attacking? Are you very defensive? What is the approach to the problem? What is the approach to the situation? Also, you can approach a person on the street. That means you can go hacia, go towards the person. You can approach a person. Somebody's coming towards you. The next bit of grammar is important. It's the Saxon possession. So when something is the possession of the person, this is my house. This is Brian's with the S, house. So it's just a point for grammar that you have to remember. The next verb is to deflect. So if you hit the football and the ball hits a defender and goes in a different direction, that's a deflection, the substantive. But the verb is to deflect. Also, you can deflect attention from the team. So if you have a lot of problems with the team, you talk about something different to deflect the attention. It's a good word. And the next one is also a substantive, a shot. Disparo, I think, is the translation in Spanish. Disparar is to shoot. In English, it's S-H-O-O-T, but the substantive is a shot, S-H-O-T. The purple word towards is a preposition that's fundamental for movement. Hacia, I think, is the translation. So I am going towards the city centre. And the next word is specific for football. The locker room, the changing room. Vestario, I think, is the place where you go to change for the football. It's the dressing room or the changing room. The next one is to greet. So if you greet, it's like to welcome. The verb is to greet, G-R-E-E-T, and that's the past simple. Greeted, on his way. The preposition is on my way. So your friend calls you and asks you, where are you? And you say, I am on my way to the shop. I am on my way to meet you. It's a very typical expression, on your way. Meanwhile and while are very important. They're practically the same. The translation is mientras. Mientras in English could be while or meanwhile. At the start of the sentence, it's typically meanwhile. In the middle, it could be while. The next word is very difficult. It's very interesting, and it's the verb to mourn. Typically at a funeral, when a person dies and you have the expression and the feeling of sadness, you're in the period of mourning. It's the way to express your sadness when somebody dies. Thunder and lightning. So thunder is the noise in a storm. A really bad storm, you have thunder. And lightning is the luth. But in this situation, it's an adjective, thunderous sound, a really loud noise. Ruido, it's like a noisy sound. Then the background is the place behind. For example, you have a picture and you have the person at the front of the picture, but in the background is a shop, for example. So it's a key word, the background. But in a football team, you can have the main player, the star, who has the media attention, but people in the back who do the work, they are in the background. And it's very typical in sports and in teams in that situation. Crouch is a very difficult word to explain. So it's a position so you can stand, but if you go down low and you're very sad, you lose the match, you're on the pitch, your position of your body is very low with your knees and your arms down low. That's to crouch. It's typical maybe in a war. A soldier could be in a position to hide, esconder. And in this situation, the footballer was on the ground, very sad after losing the match, crouching. To get up, that's the phrasal verb get up, and it's typical in the morning. You get up in the morning, but if you're on the ground, you need to get up. And the next one, of course, is very typical in Spanish. Un abrazo is a hug, but the verb is to hug in English, and it's the past simple, so there's two G's. Hugged, it's to hug. Excuse me, and that's the past simple of un abrazo, to hug. The next verb is very important, to seem in English. The translation is parecer, but this is the past simple, regular with ed, so seemed. So it's from the family parecer. So those who seem most affected. The next point is very important, un otro, another in English. So another coffee or other coffees. So the difference is singular and plural. Singular for another, I want another coffee, but plural for other, I want other coffees. So that's the key difference, and it's a common mistake, particularly from Spanish to English. The difference between another for singular and other for plural. So you need to be very clear, and you need to be very, very sure about that. It's a very common issue. The next word is also a preposition, and it's practically the same as in, but here's within, and it's dentro. So within 2 weeks, it's typically with time. Within 3 weeks, within 4 weeks, I will have my book. So in that time, dentro, in. It's practically the same, but it's more typical with time. And then perder, on penalties, en penalties. Probably it's the same in Spanish, but in English we say I lost the match on penalties. You can also say by penalties, por penalties. Fail is fallar, so the verb to fail, you can fail an exam, and in this situation he failed his penalty kick. We can also say missed, but it's just a synonym in that situation. And you can fail an exam, as I said, fail an examination. The next word is several. It's like muchos, several people, several times. It's a very key word in English that we use a lot. It's like mucho, many, many times. The next word is interesting, is the verb to launch. You can launch a book, you can launch the rocket, typical with the rocket. But in this situation, it's an attack in football. You launch an attack, you start an attack. The translation is probably tirar. Tirar in English is to throw. Throw is very similar to launch. And then to stop is parar. So you stop a goal, you stop an attack. And here it's clear you stop the penalties. The next one is the path. So you have a path, it's like the way. So the path of a team is the trajectory of a team. Stood is the next word. It's a bit difficult. The verb to stand when you're on your 2 feet, but the past simple is irregular. So he stood. So this is just an example of irregular past. The verb in the present is to stand, and the past is stood. The next word you see is so. It's typical with an adjective, so happy, so tired. I think it's tan feliz, tan triste, so sad. And here it's just so stupid. So it's just emphasis for stupid or happy. So it's tan feliz, so happy. Storm is a substantive, so you have a tormenta. It's a big storm with a lot of rain, but in this situation it's an adjective, stormy, with the Y, and it's a description of the World Cup. It's a stormy World Cup. Ended up is a phrasal verb, so you have the verb with the preposition, ended up. It's practically the same as end or finish, so it's typically associated with the final moment. So I went to the city centre, I started on this street, I walked, and I ended up on an extra street. It's practically the same as end, but we just use it sometimes with end up just for a little more emphasis. To go back, I think, is the same. It's ir atrás, so the team has gone back 10 years, 20 years, for example. Just in the article, they explain a decade. The next combination is it fell to, so that means it was my responsibility. This situation, this opportunity fell to Aspas. So it was by luck, suerte. It fell to me, it fell to you. And fall is the verb caer, and the past is irregular, fell. It's an interesting combination. It's a nice expression that we use quite a lot. Reach a point is a good combination. Also, the verb to reach is very important in English. I think it's alcanzar in Spanish. So you reach a time, you reach a moment. And in this situation, it's alcanzar un punto. It's you reach a point in your career where you have to retire, jubilar. It's a good combination, but it's interesting in the article also. To stand up against Iran is to confront, enfrentar. It's a common word in English, to stand up. For example, the bully in the school. If a bully is speaking with another boy and the boy is not happy, he has to confront the other person and to stand up for himself. It's a good combination of words, and we use it a lot in English. The next combination is a bit difficult to translate, but it's very, very typical in English. The first situation, a matter. Matter is practically the same as asunto. Asunto in English we say issue. So yeah, it's a matter of time, it's a matter of money. Es un asunto de dinero, es un asunto de tiempo. And here they say an asunto of a mal dia. So it's a good word, but it's practically the translation of asunto. Goalkeeper is the person who's in the goal. David De Gea is the goalkeeper, but the verb is to keep. Keep is practically the same as mantener. So you mantener, in English we say maintain your house, maintain your goal. It's like protect your goal, protect your house. And that's the reason why we say goalkeeper. We also have a shopkeeper, is the person who maintains and protects the shop. Excuse me. The next one is again a preposition with a verb. So the verb is to surrender, but you typically surrender to. So the army surrendered to the other army. Roulette, I think, is the same in other languages. It's the game of Russian roulette. It's you take a chance. Penalties, I think, is the same again, but you have to be careful in the plural. The singular is with the Y and the plural changes IES. That's just an example of irregular plural. Career is very important. In Spanish you say carrera, but it's more associated with academics and university. In English, career is professional. Your professional career. What is your career? It's more professional. In Spanish, I think it's more associated with university, your studies and academics. The next word you can see is the lawn. It's the vocabulary. It's peculiar. It's very old. It's a little more formal. In English, normally we say grass. So the grass, that's green, but also you can say the pitch for football. And they speak here about the pitch for football, the grass for football, but it's an older, maybe more formal word for grass, the lawn. And typical for the tennis competition in Wimbledon, that's a lawn competition. Here they have, the next one is up to the task. Task is tarea, but if you are up to the task, it means you're ready. Up to is the combination here. So it's up to you, but here you're up to the task. It means you're ready, motivated to do something. So are you up to going to Italy to play football? Are you motivated? Are you ready? Are you interested? It's very, very good word, but it's difficult to understand because it's so small and people use it very quickly. Ramshackle, this vocabulary is the most unusual word in this text, but it's an older English word. It means disorganized. It's not very, very common. We don't use it every day, but it's interesting in this article. So a ramshackle team is like disorganized team, not a lot of time to prepare, put together very quickly, and it makes sense in the context of the article. Except is typical with the preposition for. So everybody is going to the party, everybody's going to the city, except for Juan. So it's an interesting combination, but usually it's with for, except for. And again, no matter is like asunto again, but it's very common in English. I will go to the city no matter the weather. So no import day. It's not important the weather. If it's raining, I go to the city. If it's sunshine, I go to the city. No matter the weather, I go to the city. It's very common used in that situation. The iron player, Fernando Hierro. So iron is the metal. So it's the name that people call Fernando Hierro. And then to turn the wheel, if you translate it exactly into Spanish, probably it's the same significance. It's relation to the manager, the captain. So from the ship, the pilot, the ship driver, the captain of the ship. It's the boss. So if you turn the wheel, it's related in lots of situations that you're the manager, you're the boss, you're directing the team, the business. And then the lineup is very important. In Spanish, you say titular. That's the starting 11. In English, we usually say the starting 11 or the first team. And you can also say, what is the lineup? What is the name? Who are the names of the players? Titular, I think, is the best translation. Okay, that's more or less a little explanation of the text that associated with this video about the BBC and Spain's World Cup. Probably you need the text beside you when you're looking at this video, just to see the words I'm speaking about. I hope it makes a little sense now, and thank you for watching. And if you have any questions, please let me know, and hopefully speak to you soon. Okay, thanks a lot, and bye.